Hello, welcome to the Relics of Hyrule video guide. This video is on fairies. I'm here at Anisa's cabin to start with the first of several different types of fairies. I added fairies a while ago as hints to tell you that there's an item in a location and to hint what that item is. So each color marks a different kind of item. There are 8 colors with varying rarity. Orange fairies are the most common. Green fairies are the rarest, if I remember correctly. And this constantly changes. So this video is current as of 6.49. As Relics of Hyrule grows, there will be more fairies added to different locations. So orange may be replaced as the one with the most fairies. Green might move up a little, but at this point, that's how it falls. You can visit the Relics of Hyrule wiki to see how rare certain colors are. It doesn't really matter, but it gives you a sense of like what the ratios of the different items. So, for instance, this red fairy is telling me that there's a weapon inside Anisa's cabin. So, another thing that I've added recently, well, relatively recently, is the fairy disable system. So I'm going to go into Anisa's cabin, look around, see if there's a weapon from Relics of Hyrule. There's a Song of the Alchemists. That's nice. My guess... Get out of my way. Stenvar, what is your problem? Alright. I'm gonna go... I know where it is. It's right here. Orden Sword. So there's the Orden Sword. When I take the Orden Sword... Fairy disappears. Fairy is no longer here. So the script that runs that is very simple.
I'm just a poor old woman, dear. No need to trouble yourself.
Shut up your mouth! Okay. There's 2 different scripts. One is for loose items, so if this Alto wine was a weapon from Relics of Hyrule, and I picked that up, there's a script that would fire that is on activate. So I activate it, and it would disable the fairy. The chest, the container version of the script is a little more complicated. It checks... it's registered the Orden Sword, for instance, and it's linked to the fairy. And when I take the Orden Sword out, it says, okay, the Orden Sword has changed containers, and it disables the fairy. That's how that script works. Not every fairy will disable. Pink fairies don't usually disable. And most other fairies do. Have I mentioned how many colors there are? If I have, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 colors of fairies. I may have said 8, but I forgot about the pink ones. So here's a breakdown of the colors. Pink fairies mark just general stuff from Relics of Hyrule. So if you see a pink fairy, there could be anything in there. They're not as rare, they're not as common as they used to be. I sort of broke it down and separated pink fairies into other fairies, so that you know exactly what you're looking at. Red marks weapons, like I said. Orange marks armor. Yellow marks ammunition, like arrows. Green marks valuables, like ingots or gems. Blue marks weapons. Purple or violet marks lore or books or something like that. Black always marks a charred fragment, and white always marks a tarnished shard. So, we've seen a red fairy. Let's see if we can find a pink fairy. Here's a pink fairy. This one is outside Morwitterjal. Pink fairies are usually outside of locations that were added by Relics of Hyrule. Reason being is there's just so much from Relics of Hyrule inside places like Morwitterjal or the Secret Grottos that it would be pointless to put a differently colored fairy out. So this one's pink, and it's just marking that there's tons of stuff from Relics of Hyrule. So really, a pink fairy is really exciting because that tells you that the location is either from Relics of Hyrule, or it's just chock full of items from the mod. Here is an orange fairy. This is outside Dark Shade. So the orange fairies look a little yellow. When you see the yellow fairy, you'll know why. Orange fairies, they mark armor. They are the most common fairy. You'll see them a lot because there's lots of armor from Relics of Hyrule. Okay, this is an yellow fairy. It is very bright yellow. If there's one fairy that like overexposes, it's this one. It's very bright. So you can see the difference between the orange fairy and the yellow fairy. The yellow fairy is just so bright. Most of the yellow fairies are found by the arrow shrines. There's some other places, and I plan to add more, especially if there's like throwing weapons somewhere, like bombs or something like that. Then you can find those around those areas. Here's a green fairy. Green fairies are very rare. There's one outside Chillwind Depths. They're usually Giant's Ingots are what they mainly mark. And I'm hoping to add more stuff that they can mark, but there's only so many things, so if it would be kind of silly to just mark rupees. I don't know. Green fairies serve a purpose. It's just a very narrow niche that they fill. Here's a blue fairy. I think it's a slightly modified Candlelight. Candlelights are a little brighter white than this, but this one's blue. And blue fairies, like I said, they mark magic. They're pretty common, and magic is any magical item. So for instance, Silverdrift Lair, it's an item that you can use to make a spell. It's not an actual spell tome or a staff or something like that. It's just something associated with magic. And that's what blue fairies mark. Here's a purple fairy in Stendarr's Beacon. Very nice color.
Stendarr's mercy be upon you, where the vigil has none to spare.
That's great. They mark books and things like that. So this is a recipe. There's a purification recipe in this safe. It's one of two places you can find it. I think the Hall of the Vigilant has another one, and it has a purple fairy as well. Here's a black fairy. I decided to make them look like the anti-fairies. They have those 4 purple bands and then those dark red bands. But this is technically a black fairy. Black fairies mark charred fragments. So inside this chest is a charred fragment. Also in this room is one of these, fairies in a jar. I will be talking about those in another video. But you can collect these. There's one of each color. This one's obviously the green one. One of each color, and then once you take one, if you take one, you can release the fairy inside. And it gives you a blessing when you release it. There we go. And so that one just increased my stamina regeneration, or fortify my stamina, fortify my stamina regeneration. And because I did that, I'll be able to recruit the fairy later, and I'll show you that. I'll go into more detail in another video, like I said. But since we're talking about these ones that float around, that is connected to that. So I'll show you where you can find more of these floaty ones. There's one more type of fairy that we need to see. So this is Mara's Eye Pond, and there is a white fairy inside Mara's Eye Pond, and I brought you to the outside because I wanted to show you that black and white fairies are never outside locations, they're always inside. So you stumble across them more than others. You won't, if there's a white fairy inside a location, you won't know that until you actually go inside. So we're inside Mara's Eye Pond, and there's the white fairy. They're sort of rainbow in color, there's rainbow around them, and they mark tarnished shards. And just like all the other fairies, when you take the tarnished shard out, fairy disappears. The black and white fairies were the first ones that I made disappear, and I missed a couple. But feel free to let me know. Let me know if any fairies other than pink fairies disappear. If they don't disappear, I mean. If there's a fairy that doesn't disappear and you think it should, let me know, and I'll find it. There's over 130 fairies in the mod, and that number is constantly growing. So they're gonna slip through the cracks, so to speak. Okay, so I'm gonna show you where that green fairy went that I released from the jar. Okay, here is the fairy fountain. If you have a piece of the Triforce, you can interact with this fairy font, and when you activate it, it will, any fairies that you've released from the jars, it will manifest right there. If you have any jars in your inventory, they're going to take the fairies out. It's going to take the fairies out and place them in the world here. So that green fairy that I released, I can recruit. And it's divided by warm and cool colors, and then shades, white and black. So since I have the green fairy, I can summon it or recruit it. It's an restoration spell, and it serves as sort of a candlelight. So it's a green candlelight spell. But there's also the Green Fairy Guardian. So there's a chance every time you get hit, there's a chance that the Green Fairy will counter the attack and do something by, it'll restore and fortify your stamina, for instance. And you can turn them off by casting again. So it's a really nice system. I will do a video on where every single fairy jar is, and I'll explain what each individual fairy does. This was just sort of a preview of that system.